Thanks, Manu. We're lucky enough that we'll be getting another performance from Manu at the end, so make sure you stick around. We have guests today from all over the world, so we have a couple of special language channels set up. Now I'll hand it over to Carlos and Cecilia, who will be introducing our Spanish and Portuguese translation channels.
For Spanish, click on the link on your screen or in the chat and choose the audio channel. Para español, haz clic con este link en tu pantalla o en el chat y escoge el canal de audio.
Para português, clique no link e escolha o canal português.
Thanks, Carlos. Thanks, Cecilia. I'm tired of this pandemic. I'm tired of every thought, every plan being constrained by the limitations of COVID. And I am here today because I want to do my part in making sure that I don't have to carry this weight anymore, so that none of us has to carry this weight anymore. In June 2019, I moved to Ireland for work. I didn't know anyone there, and all of my friends, my family, and my partner were in a different country. I was just starting to find a community in early 2020, but then the pandemic reached Ireland. In the first part of the lockdown, we could only move within a mile radius of our houses. Well, my partner was 1,100 miles away, and my family was over 3,000 miles away. I felt isolated. I felt trapped, and I felt like I was reaching the end of my strength, even as I knew that I had to keep going. And yet I know that I'm one of the lucky ones. I could keep my job, and my parents and family avoided getting infected. And with the promise of the vaccine now within reach, it feels like I can see the end of the road and I might be able to breathe again. But even as the US continues to vaccinate 1.5 million people every day, there are over 100 countries that have not yet received a single vaccine. So this is no time to relax. If we claim victory when the US population is fully vaccinated, we are ignoring the fundamental realities of this disease, that we cannot end the pandemic until we end it everywhere. I'm tired, but I get inspired when I learn of the work of activists like Sibongile Shabalala, who has made it her life's work for the health and dignity of the poor in South Africa, like Chai, who has the courage to call out the government of Bolsonaro in Brazil for their deadly ignorance in the face of this disease and their suppression of indigenous voices like hers, and Adi Barkan, who continues to advocate for faster, more comprehensive access to medicines, even as he is dying from ALS. I'm delighted that we will, as they give me the energy to keep going and keep pushing, because I know I need to find that energy somewhere, because I am not safe until they are safe, until you are safe. My family is not safe until your family is safe. We are reminded every day of the costs of this connectivity. But during the event today, we are going to celebrate how this connectivity also gives us strength. It is vitally important that we act together at a global scale. Throughout this event, you will see a link at the top of your screen for options to take concrete action. We'll share some more details about the actions later on in the program, but please check it out whenever you feel inspired. We hope you'll join us to put an end to this pandemic. Now, for some background on the specific plan we are supporting today to end the pandemic, I would like to share a video from Justice is Global and the People's Health Movement.
A global pandemic calls for a global solution. But what exactly does that look like?
One part of the solution is vaccination. Widespread access to vaccines will slow the spread, prevent severe illness, and keep health systems and healthcare workers from being overrun and overworked.
In short, vaccines will save millions of lives. To reach this impact, we need a lot of vaccines, billions of them.
And we can't just vaccinate where we are. We have to vaccinate everyone globally.
If every country needs vaccinations, then why is it that countries like the US and other wealthy countries are getting a disproportionate amount of vaccines, while less wealthy countries will be without vaccinations until 2024?
Not only will people who contributed to vaccine testing and development in the global south not get access to vaccines, millions of people will die unnecessarily. That would be a catastrophe for human civilization, with the highest concentration in the lowest income nations also.
That is vaccine nationalism. That is vaccine apartheid.
Seeing what is clearly a global problem through a nationalist lens will only further tensions between countries and strengthen right-wing movements around the world.
And from an economic perspective, all economies, including those of the global north, will suffer from slow and unequitable vaccination.
This only makes clear that no one is safe unless everyone is safe.
But this unique hardship brings unique opportunity for global solidarity. We can come together and ensure that human rights are respected for everyone, regardless of where they live or how much they have.
We can end the pandemic with smart policy and social movements demanding our governments put the interest of people first. Public health experts have put forth many proposals, and we need them all to emerge from this pandemic strong and united.
COVAX is a platform created by the World Health Organization that was intended to support all countries to get access to vaccines. But in reality, some countries are paying more, particularly low and middle income countries in Africa. COVAX was only designed to be able to cover a mere 20% of people in a given country, putting it far below the necessary vaccination rate. And even to reach that 20% goal, COVAX is still short $4.3 billion.
The COVID Technology Access Pool, which is a centralized location through the World Health Organization to compile COVID-19 health technology-related knowledge, intellectual property, and data through CTAP, more companies and manufacturers would have access to the know-how to produce vaccines. But CTAP is voluntary and has limited buy-in so far.
The Trade-Related Intellectual Property Rights Agreement, or TRIPS, of the World Trade Organization is a key barrier to scaling up production. If member countries of the WTO agree to waive parts of the TRIPS agreement, it would overturn typical intellectual property restrictions that limit vaccine access. This would allow for countries to choose whether only a few companies have rights to produce and distribute the vaccine, or to open up the opportunity for the production and the distribution of cheaper, generic versions of the vaccine. Led by India and South Africa, 100 countries have supported the waiver.
So what's the catch? If we all agree that global vaccination is the only path to ending the pandemic, why is the US joining with other countries to block the waiver?
The sad answer is that the Biden administration is doing it to protect the profits of the pharmaceutical industry, an industry that's publicly funded, but whose profits are largely reserved for billionaire private investors.
But President Biden has made public comments promising a very different vision for vaccine distribution.
Will you ensure there are no patents to stand in the way of other countries and companies mass producing those life-saving vaccines?
Absolutely, positively. This is the only humane thing in the world to do. So the answer is yes, 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 yes. And it's not only a good thing to do, it's overwhelmingly in our interest to do it as well.
Thank you for that commitment.
Biden has a real interest in restoring the broken relationships between the US and other nations left over from the destructive Trump years. As our new president, he has a responsibility to work in the interest of all of us everywhere to end the pandemic quickly and equitably.
This is a chance for us to fight for justice. This is a chance for us to fight for our own safety, because again, no one is safe until everyone is safe.
To end the pandemic here.
To end the pandemic here.
To end the pandemic here.
We have to end it everywhere.
The World Health Organization officially declared COVID-19 to be a pandemic on March 11th, 2020. Within just a year, we have passed the horrifying milestone of 2.5 million deaths. As we heard in this video, the vaccine capacity currently available to companies and governments that have developed vaccines, we will have to wait another 3 years for the entire world to receive the vaccine. How many millions more will die while we wait? Or will we act now to lift the intellectual property rules that are slowing down vaccine production? That's the choice that we're looking at today. The TRIPS waiver has been invoked before, including to produce antiretroviral treatments to control the HIV/AIDS epidemic in South Africa. Our first speaker has been a key player in the fight for affordable access to life-saving antiretrovirals. She has been working for the last 15 years on this fight. Sibongile Tshabalala, whom you saw in the video, is the national chairperson for the Treatment Action Campaign, and she is now going to share her experience advocating for the human rights of the sick and why it is so important that we act fast on the TRIPS waiver. Welcome, Sibongile.
Thank you, Amy. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sibongile Tshabalala, the National Chairperson of Treatment Action Campaign, as I've been introduced. I will start by introducing Treatment Action Campaign. Treatment Action Campaign was launched in 1998. The reason of being launched of this movement is because at that time, people who were living with HIV were dying. They were dying not because there were no treatment in the country, but the ARV treatment was under patent. So it was difficult for people who are coming from poor background like me to afford the medication because it was highly expensive. Over 20 years, Treatment Action Campaign, it's been continuing to fight for better healthcare services and fighting pharma greed. we've been in this fight for a very long time, and we are continuing to fight for access to medicine globally, not only in South Africa. As I'm talking to you today, South Africa is able to purchase or to give out about 67% of its population the vaccine. But what about countries that are around us as South Africa or our neighboring countries? As I'm talking to you today, Zimbabwe managed to buy Samafa, which is one of the vaccines, but that vaccine, it's only effective, or it's only catered for people 18 to 59. What about those who are over 59? It means they can't access it. And the effectiveness of that drug, it's not yet be tested, especially in Zimbabwe, knowing that African countries has a new variant that of COVID-19. Few weeks back in South Africa, we have experienced a challenge where it was reported that AstraZeneca, which it was bought for people in South Africa, it only has 22% efficacy, and only J&J vaccine that will be able to be more effective, like 85% to our new variant in Africa or in South Africa. So what does that mean? It means that some of the can be able to purchase might not be effective enough for us here in Africa, but others they might be. So what does that mean for poor countries and the countries that cannot be able to afford to buy vaccines? It means that if now, as the TRIPS waiver, it's been blocked by US and other countries, richer countries, it means more people in the global south will die. And it means more people will not be able to access COVID-19 vaccines. So COVID-19 vaccines, COVID-19, it didn't only affect wealthier countries, but it affected everyone, and everyone have to access the vaccine. So that means that we need a TRIPS waiver so that we cannot be infected with COVID-19, or we can be able to fight COVID-19. I would like to send a special message to President Joe Biden. President Joe Biden, I think you understand our frustrations, and I think you understand how does it feel when one lose one a family member or a friend due to not be able to access medication. And I listened to one of your videos where you were telling your story, and I think you must understand better. So if you allow other countries to block TRIPS waiver, it means poor people like me who is living with HIV, who's been a victim of big pharma greed, who accessed her medication after 6 years of being infected with HIV, which it was a struggle already. It means our blood, it's in your hands. So I'm urging all Americans and everyone in the world to say, let's say to the World Trade Organization, now it's not a time for allowing pharmaceutical companies to make profit over people's lives. Now is the time to save everyone's life. If I'm safe, you are safe. If your family is safe, my family is safe. If your friend is safe, my friend is safe. So we need to save each other. We need the vaccine, all of us in the world. So this is not time for politics. This is time for saving people's lives. Amandla, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sipongile. It's powerful to hear your story, and what you say, that a delay on action on the TRIPS waiver is costing lives, is costing the blood of people like you and the people in the global south, is a message that we all need to hear. So thank you for your efforts for fighting for affordable access to medicine in South Africa. Truly inspiring work. We got to hear a clip in the introductory video featuring Addie Barkan, a health rights activist with Be a Hero. When Biden was on the campaign trail, he was ready to commit to Addie to keep patents from getting in the way of vaccine access. Now, Addie has shared a message for us reinforcing the importance of getting President Biden to keep his promise. Over to Addie.
There.
Greetings, Earthlings. It's an honor to be able to speak to you today about this important issue. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Adi Barkan, and I am 37 years old. 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with a terrible neurological illness called ALS. It has since left me totally paralyzed. That is why I am speaking to you through this computer voice. I don't have to tell any of you how difficult the last year has been. We just marked a mind-boggling 500,000 COVID deaths here in the United States. A totally unnecessary and painful reminder of the human toll the pandemic has taken. And millions of Americans have lost their jobs and their health insurance, and our economic future feels shaky and uncertain. The promise of a vaccine has always been the light at the end of this dark tunnel. In early January, when COVID was really raging in Southern California where we live, 3 of my caregivers and our nanny all fell ill with COVID. Even our baby girl was infected, although thankfully she had no symptoms. It was a scary time for all of us. I had to be separated from my family, but we couldn't fully lock down because I need 24-hour care. Luckily, after a few weeks of uncertainty, we all came out of that okay. And I didn't end up getting sick. But in the middle of this disaster, I just kept thinking to myself, why weren't our healthcare workers all vaccinated 2 weeks ago? I know we're not the only family facing enormous obstacles in this pandemic. That's why I'm teaming up with progressive groups across the country to shine a light on the shortcomings of our country's coronavirus response and vaccine distribution, and demand that leaders in Washington fix them. But getting vaccines to everyone around the world is a global problem. At the current pace, millions of people will not get access to vaccines until 2024. This means we will not end the pandemic or the shutdown, and gives the virus many months to mutate and become more deadly. We need to work together across the globe to stop this thing as fast as we can. We need to massively expand vaccine production and eliminate any and all barriers to production and distribution. We must not allow the wealthiest countries of the world, including the US of course, to put pharma profits over ending this pandemic. But by blocking the TRIPS waiver, that is what they are doing. Today, we are calling on the Biden administration to be part of the solution by supporting the TRIPS waiver. As you all saw from this clip, President Biden cares deeply about ending this pandemic. He knows that we cannot go at it alone, and that we must work collaboratively with the rest of the world to solve this crisis. Today, we are calling on President Biden to follow through on the commitment to put our lives and ending the pandemic over pharma profit. Thank you for all you are doing in this struggle for global justice and human rights. We have no time to waste.
Such an amazing story. I hope you will join us and join Addie today in taking action to help call the Biden administration to support the TRIPS waiver. And now I'll hand it over to Carlos Gonzalez, who is another organizer with Justice is Global, to share his story of dealing with COVID-19. Over to you, Carlos.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carlos, and I am joining from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm here under a worker's visa, but I am from Mexico, where my family lives. Both of my parents got COVID a couple of months ago. They both are in the high risk age group and have pre-existing conditions that made COVID especially scary. After I got the news, I would text them every day, multiple times a day, asking about them. With me being here and them in Mexico, I felt powerless to help them. Because of COVID, I couldn't even go home because it wasn't safe. It was a very real possibility that I would lose them. Fortunately, they recovered, but no one should have to go through that. It makes me angry that corporate profits are getting in the way of addressing this problem. Right now, the Biden administration is opposing the TRIPS waiver at the WTO, putting profits and patents over people. But we can change that by taking action today. Join me and follow the link on your screen.
I believe I'm next. Should I start? Amy?
Thank you, and I hope you've had a chance to take action. And remember, at any point, please click the link whenever you feel inspired. Your voice matters in this fight. Our next speaker is Dr. Joya Mukherjee. My favorite description of her that I've encountered is a proud rabble-rouser. She is both an expert in disease and global public health, and also a fierce advocate for a preferential option for the poor, healthcare treatment that gives preferential access to the people who need it most in her capacity as the Chief Medical Officer for Partners in Health. I'm happy to hand it over to Dr. Joya Mukherjee. Over to you.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you to everyone who's spoken today. And I'm just reminded of Sibangile's important call, Amandla, and of course, that is Awetu is the answer that everyone should be giving, which is to the people. And what we know from our long history of working with these fantastic groups, like the Treatment Action Committee, like Health Gap, Doctors Without Borders, and grassroots groups like Justice is Global, is that the only way to change this terrible dynamic of inequity in any setting is through popular protest, through demanding change, because the powers that structure the inequality in the world, which is corporate power, the power of race, the power of nationalism, racism, I should say, the power of nationalism will always create these first, second, and third worlds. And my life, my career, my passion was formed by the work of activists who taught me everything I know about justice. And so I started in HIV many years ago, before there was a treatment at all, and working in Africa, seeing so many of my friends die without treatment. And then returning to the United States in 1995 when we discovered the cocktail. And in that year, 95, was when I saw the last of my personal American patients die of HIV. People were levitated off their deathbeds. We called it the Lazarus effect. But in 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 8,000 people a day died of HIV without treatment. And the large majority of them were in sub-Saharan Africa, in countries like South Africa, as people were crying, Amandla, Awetu. How do we put the power back in the hands of the people? And today, and we won that fight. We won that fight by a grassroots movement that created public shame for the people who were making profits, that created alternative pathways for generic production and massive scale of antiretrovirals. And when I started this journey with Partners in Health, fewer than 50,000 people on the continent of Africa were being treated of the 26 million who had HIV. And today there are 27 million people who are receiving antiretrovirals for free in countries like South Africa and Mozambique and Cambodia and Mexico. How did that happen? Well, it happened through TRIPS waivers, getting rid of these patented developments, the fruits of modern science, which, by the way, are basic human rights. It happened through technology transfer and the sharing of manufacturing capacity with massive factories in places like India. And it happened through the grassroots disbursement, the expert knowledge of people like Sibongile and others who could help their fellows to be on these medicines for life. And we know how to do this. And the thing that gives me great hope is that we've won this battle before. The problem with COVID-19 is it is far quicker in its spread across the globe. And so our response has to be quicker and more urgent. But what we have seen is that health and justice are political choices. They're political choices. Every day, the United States spends $3 billion on our military. That is a political choice we are making for a kind of security that is not giving us security in the 21st century. It's giving us power and might, but it's not giving us true security. What will give us security in the 21st century is solidarity. Solidarity to work on these major threats like racism, like nationalism, like climate change, and like the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we need to call for the wealthy governments who have gotten wealthy on the impoverishment of Africa, of Latin America, of Asia, that have gotten wealthy through the extraction of resources. The richest continent in the world is Africa, but the people are the poorest because their wealth has been robbed literally out from beneath them. They do not control the resources of their land. And so we have to look at this time and this 21st century as a way that we can move justice to a collaborative framework, one that is based on not profit and extraction. One is that's based on a protection of one another and the earth. And one is that is based on human rights far beyond the national boundaries, but as an intersectional and international movement. And we can start with COVID. And how do we do that? One, we need to insist that the United States step up to the leadership role we can play and mass manufacture the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines in the United States using mechanisms that have already been developed in the Department of Defense to do the mass manufacture. Because, by the way, without the mass manufacture of the vaccine, we will not be able to equitably vaccinate even our own population. As we know, Black and brown people in the United States itself are 3 to 4 times more likely to die and less likely to get vaccinated. Once we do that, we need to share those technologies, not only the patents, but the know-how with generic manufacturing companies all over the world, India, South Africa, Thailand, places that do have the capacity to make vaccines. Remember, we're vaccinating billions of people for childhood vaccines. Those vaccines aren't made in the United States. Yes, there are some new technologies, but those can be taught and shared. And then we need to invest in real health systems in the impoverished countries of the world so that healthcare can truly be a human right. And those investments will have a long-term impact. If we have better cold chain, if we have more production capacity, if we have more health workers, doctors and nurses, if we pay community health workers, these things will have a long-lasting shift for the benefit of all. And that economy could be an economy based in fairness and protection and love, rather than based in profit and extraction. We know how to do this. And the AIDS movement showed us the way as the first step toward global justice. And you know what? It didn't cut into the profits of big pharma. Those generic drugs that are being used in South Africa or Ghana or Haiti or Liberia are not costing us any money. They did not stifle innovation. These are excuses that we have heard for the last hundreds of years, that somehow the only source for brilliance and innovation is profit. We reject that. We reject that notion. The very famous scientist who brought us the polio vaccine, Jonas Salk, he wasn't interested in profit. He was interested in a vaccine that would help the world. And so we have to, as a global community, say that we need the patents to be waived around the world. We need the technology to be shared. We need to have a mass production of the vaccine to eliminate the falsely created scarcity that is saying that we can only vaccinate 500 million people. That is a false created scarcity that protects only profit. It does not protect innovation. It does not protect people. And it does not protect the earth. It protects none of the things that we care most about. And so what I would say from my organization, Partners in Health, we welcome this fight because we're in it with the right partners, the people who have been there. I joked on Twitter, get the band back together. Let's bring everyone together, Amandla and power Awetu to the people as we go forward and say, this vaccine has to be for all, and our target should be 7 billion people, 14 billion doses, and then map out how we get there as fast as we can with the most community participation that we can find. So we're happy to be in this with all of you. We welcome this challenge and opportunity. And this is the time to turn the swords, the $3 billion we spend a day on destruction, into the plowshares of peace and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mukherjee. Thank you for your leadership and thank you for your advocacy on these important issues. The millions of people who died from AIDS because of inadequate access to is a costly price to learn our lesson about the balance of power between people and corporate interests. It is inhumane to pay another few millions of lives to learn this lesson again. Has been leading within Congress to find a global solution for the pandemic and has been a vocal advocate for the TRIPS waiver. Now I'll hand it over to Representative Jesus Chuy Garcia.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. My name is Chuy Garcia, and I represent the Illinois 4th District in the U.S. Congress. I'm proud to join you in saying we have to end the pandemic everywhere. Viruses are international. They do not care about borders. COVID-19 crossed borders to get here, and new strains in the UK and South Africa prove it's not stopping. So it's not only greedy to limit this vaccine to a few countries that can afford it, it will cost us lives right here in the US. India and South Africa are calling on the WTO to temporarily suspend certain intellectual property laws for COVID-19 medicine, and it makes a lot of sense. We learned from the AIDS crisis that policy can save lives around the world, but it needs to happen sooner rather than later. Right now, billions of people around the world won't get a COVID-19 vaccine until 2024. I don't know about you, but my constituents and I can't wait that long to be safe from the virus. This is not about science. This is about drug companies pressuring the governments of rich countries to put profits over lives. So I stand with you to say this is wrong. I call on the U.S. to be a leader and support the TRIPS waiver at the World Trade Organization. My colleagues in Congress and I sent a letter to the administration on this issue this week. The WTO meets next week, and I'm sure they will hear our voices loud and clear. So thanks to the organizations that pulled this together, including Justice is Global, People's Action, Health Gap, the Center for Popular Democracy, and others. Thanks to my friend Adi Barkan for your tireless work for justice, and thanks to all of you for joining. Let's keep up the pressure to end this pandemic everywhere.
Thank you, Representative Garcia, for your support and your advocacy within the halls of Congress. Now, everyone, we are getting close to wrapping up for today. We've heard some outstanding speakers and some impassioned arguments for supporting this TRIPS waiver and for why we need your help, why a grassroots effort is really the only way to create the pressure on the people that have the control to make the decision. So please, if you have a moment, we will take a moment now for you to take an action. So please click on the link at the top of your screen and sign up for an opportunity to make your voice heard so that we can end this pandemic together. Shortly, we will be hearing a final performance by musician Manu Grace. And at the end, we will be creating the opportunity for us to discuss in breakout groups what our stakes are in this fight and what we can do together to end this pandemic once and for all. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Thanks to our amazing speakers and our supportive sponsors for today. And thank you again for your solidarity.
Again, this is Manu Grace. Thank you so much for having me. This next one is called 2 Weeks. I'll speak your language today, tomorrow you'll pick up mine. I head out to the beach, you stay and sweat your feet around. I come home drunk and salty, and I come home, you go down. Amazing, someone after just 2 weeks. Is it wrong to love someone after just 2 weeks? You want to speak my language, I'll let you speak my mind. If I knew you just a little bit better, I'd say, boy, you need to slow down. I come home drunk and salty, and I come home, you go down. Our reason wrong to love someone after just 2 weeks. Is it wrong to love someone after just 2 weeks? I thought I could get away with summer romance. Now I'm deep in it, but I need to get back when the snow starts to fall. I thought I could get away with summer romance. Now I'm deep in it, but I need to get back when the snow starts to fall. What a pity, what a poem when the snow starts to appear. What a poem when the snow starts to fall. Is it wrong to love someone after just 2 weeks? Thank you.
Thanks again, Manu Grace, for sharing your music with us. All right, you should be able to see on the screen a link to a breakout session where you'll be able to discuss your reactions. We'd love to hear from you, and you can connect with other people that are present on the call today. Looking forward to seeing you there. And thanks again.